Recording has started, Finley. Thank you for coming on today, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you back on. For context, we have already recorded this podcast episode once. But basically, I'm a Karen and an absolute overthinker, and I think that basically, because we included a few swear words and that, and just being natural, I don't want to get in trouble off my future employer, should I say, because I start a new job in January, so I don't want to get in trouble before I even start. But just for context, we're in different surroundings today. Finley is back at home for Christmas, which is superb. But Finley here is rather innovative because he's the only wheelchair user that I know that knows how to use an air fryer. Do you want to talk about that before we get into music, mate? We got the air fryers.
I'm a recently converted lover of an air fryer.
Yeah,
I was an air fryer skeptic up until about 6 months ago, someone's taught me the ways, and yeah.
honestly, mate, the life savers. What have you got in your locker in terms of cooking? Can you do a bit, mate, or what?
I don't. I can like, not very well. So like I can cook like a spag bowl and like,
Love it.
but it's hot water and pans is the thing. I don't like.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous game when you're a wheelchair user like yourself.
So pizzas in the oven is about my realistically, and things in the air fryer. That's my
You
limit.
do. You
Yeah.
do, right, mate? Anyone who is listening to this episode, right, you need to get to know who this guy is. He's absolutely mint guy. I've only known him over the last, 3 or 4 or 5 months, which we'll get into in a minute. But he's absolutely mint guy, and everyone needs to know about the great stuff that Finley's doing. Do you want to introduce yourself, how we know one another, and why you're on here today? Because you're best DJ this side of Cardiff, mate, or wherever.
Thank you, man. I thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Um, yeah. So I'm Finley Allen. I guess I am a music producer and DJ based in Cardiff. I've got cerebral palsy. And yeah, I just have a love of music, really. And the reason why we met, like across the board, I do electronic music. And
Yes,
I'm
mate.
sure we'll go on to that in a bit. But yeah, so the reason why me and you met is because you gave me the fantastic opportunity to come and play at the United by the Groove event, which was put on by yourself, Lee, Gabe, and Charlie. And yeah, one of the best experiences um, I've ever had. And and let's hope we can continue it in future, definitely.
100%, mate. And firstly, as I always say to you, you don't need to say this. I didn't provide you with the opportunity, mate. You provided
Yeah, but
yourself.
it's not as straightforward as that, to be fair. Like you did like, and oh, big shout outs to Jake Smith as well, because he was the guy that,
What a fella.
yeah, what a bloke. And that's another guy you need to get on the podcast, because
Yeah, mate.
yeah, he's a really talented bloke. And yeah, I think I feel really lucky this year in particular, because I feel like this is the first year that I've been producing for about 2.5, 3 years now, but this is the first year that I really feel that um I've wanted to start, promoting myself and doing
Yes, mate.
I got more confident about it and stuff. So I'm really lucky with some of the people that I met this year. And like I said, it's been the last few months doing things like that. It's just, yeah, it's been like an eye opener, but an eye opener in a good way, because I never I'd never seen as many um wheelchair users or people with other disabilities in that kind of space before. And I'm sure like you can relate to it, in that we go to raves and different gigs and things with our mates like all the time, you know, but a lot of the time that means having to sacrifice part of yourself to do that. So to go to a place that didn't feel like you had to do that, and everyone was supportive and inclusive, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to start to do in sort of, I guess, my area of the country as well, and so we can try and build a network and try and make it more of a standard, I suppose, like something that people recognize as important.
Absolutely. Music is a universal language, and it brings so many people together. And like, it does sound cheesy. The dog's trying to get in my room. It needs to go away. But what do you call it? Does sound cheesy, but it's when you're on the dance floor and immersed in the music. Also, as well as feeling equal, I believe we are sending messages in terms of changing outside perceptions of what disabled people can and can't do, or this
Yeah.
sounds weird, what disabled people are, because often uh,
Mhm.
people like myself and you have this perception that we sit at home eating Kit Kats and watching, Jeremy Michael. There are other programs available, but I think you get what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think yeah, I would get pretty bored if I watched too much Jeremy Kyle quite too quickly. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I know what you mean. And it's about challenging that perception because it's a stereotype which um one of the biggest things I think I find in daily life and just in general is the opportunities that members of the public, in whatever situation that might be, give you to um it sometimes feels like you can clearly voice your point of view and yet your thoughts aren't accounted for in the same way. Um
or taken seriously.
Taken seriously. Like so, I'm not going to go into what we were talking about
Yeah,
before. I'll just
minefield.
allude to a certain scenario. I could be complaining about something uh, on the phone, and I could complain about it three, four, five times. My dad can do the same thing and
Yeah.
get a similar response. So it's just like, yeah, but that's when. I've recently realised it's something I still struggle with. It's something that I have struggled with, but I've recently realised like um you have to do it. Like you have to like as hard as it might be to talk about it and be because you know I, you know big respect to all of the people that of all minorities that speak out against discrimination in whatever
Yeah.
scenario that might be. But I think it takes a very specific type of person to do that, and I've never really
Yes.
viewed as myself as a person who
Yeah.
wants to do that for people with physical disabilities and wheelchair users. However, um, I recognize that like I am beginning to build a small platform, and
100%.
even on that small platform, I think I've always looked for um role models, when like role models when I started out in only a couple of years ago, but when I started out doing music, I very quickly realized that actually one or two of the only people that people knew with any form of disability um in the music industry was Ian Jury and Stevie Wonder, you know what I mean? And outside of that, uh,
Big up Stevie Wonder.
yeah, well, absolutely. I'm a big lover of Motown and soul. Besides that, however, Stevie Wonder is one of my favorite artists, and certainly part of the reason is because you know, well, he's been able to build a platform for himself, being a disabled person, uh, uh, um, you know, you know that being that platform being built nearly 70 years ago in America because he started so young. So if you look at
Really?
yeah, you know, he was on stage when he was at 12, 13, 14. I mean, you know, some people are born with the talent, but regardless, you know, even you you know, he was a is a disabled black kid in early 1960s America. I mean, that's, you know,
Even more marginalized.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, you know, he will forever be an inspiration, you know, but I realize that there's not that many. So, I'm not saying it's on our shoulders, it's not all on my shoulders, but the
Someone has to do it.
people, the importance of people being visible
Yeah,
is important. Yeah.
like like you say, you know, it makes a difference for future generations that come after us. And can I just say, sorry to interrupt, my dog better sort its head out in a minute because it keeps scratching at the door. If anyone can hear me breathe laughing, that's why
Yeah.
I'm laughing because my dog is scratching at the door. So I may have to text my cousin who's stopping over at my house now while my mum goes to the
It's all
hotel
right.
to say he stopped the dog from scratching at the door. But in terms of your musical love of house music and dance music in general, that's why we're both on here today because we both love having it right off in the mixer, mate.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that to the viewers while I put my phone on silent and text my cousin to
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
the
for
dog?
sure. So, I've always grown up in a very uh uh musical household, not in terms of playing instruments, but music always being played in the house.
Yeah,
And like I said, my mum's stuff that she is into, has always been into is kind of like I said, was Motown, soul and disco and stuff. And then my dad, more so like the Doors and Lou Reed and things like that. But where my mum and dad's kind of where they met, well, they met at university, but they you know were going to similar things and blah blah blah. Um, you know where they kind of really connect and a lot of the music played when I was younger was you know certainly electronic music and house music. You know I'm thinking of anything from Frankie Knuckles to the Chemical Brothers to Left Field. You know just whatever was sort of um, popular in the sort of late 90s to mid 2000s in terms of that. So yeah, they kind of met each other through their love of house music, I suppose, really, because or connected on that level because they didn't meet because of house music, but they connected on that level.
really.
Yeah. So going to um, yeah, going to raves in Cornwall basically in the 90s. Um,
Illegal raves or perfectly legal?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they both went to university in Wales. That's where they met, but then obviously yeah, my mum grew up in Cornwall to Welsh parents. My dad grew up in Plymouth to Welsh parents. So very similar backgrounds, I suppose. Um, but yeah, I guess that's where they connected, so therefore, from a very early age, my I was always exposed to electronic music. But then going beyond that, um, yeah, I kind of found my own. Like I was really, I've always really been into house music, but
Yeah.
and the first band I got into when I was a kid in terms of electronic dance music was The Prodigy, and
Oh,
I
yeah, mate.
really always really, I think I've always really liked um house music, but I also like something with a sort of maybe sometimes a bit of a harder edge or a bit more dystopian.
They certainly do have blow your head off.
Yeah, so that's where I got into kind of like um I'm more of a sort of I mean I pride myself on being able to play anything and being able to make lots of different kinds of stuff and things because I have a an eclectic taste in electronic music especially, but that's where I kind of I generally kind of produce more like Detroit techno electro kind of stuff with so with well sometimes a lot of the time with the characteristics of house music, but it's got a certain different feel to it, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, so and I think Detroit techno, I think the word techno and stuff can be misconstrued by a lot of people, and I like some quite sort of you know d- um kind of frantic and minimal techno, particularly the stuff some of the minimal stuff in Detroit from people like Jeff Mills and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, they really changed the sound in terms of that,
The
but
bells.
yeah, the bells, well, exactly, like a song like that, that's quite removed from house music, right? And
Yes.
I like a lot of that stuff. And there's some stuff in Birmingham as well, which is even more stripped back and yeah, not for everyone. However, generally it's the pads, it's the almost like how can I describe it? Like hope, hopeful melancholy in Detroit techno, thinking about stuff
Love
like
that bit.
Derek May and Carl Craig especially. And then beyond that, my favorite ever techno group of all time, Underground Resistance. I think their
Make you transition.
photography is flawless. Yeah, so that's really me, I suppose. From yeah.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. Your knowledge of the different genres is something that's unmatched in comparison to the minnows like myself who just love love a tune. I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, and I think but I also think like there's a thing. It's like, oh, well, you need to know him. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this kind of snobbery, but I do think if you want to put your like if you're going to gigs and you like the sound of music and like you go with your mates, but if you want to make music your career, it's important to know what
Yeah, 100%.
because otherwise, like I'll give you an example at the minute. You know, at the moment in South Wales, and this is by no means diminishing what we got going on, but in terms of a generally in terms of the techno events um promoted at the moment in Cardiff, they tend to be kind of more um hard style or what people would be calling hard techno. And so, as a DJ saying I do techno at the minute in like in Manchester, it's always had a bit more of a scene, a bit more, for example, or even Lancashire, it being
Yeah,
that bit closer to to the well that basically Manchester was the home of certainly house music, but electronic music really in the UK. That was one of the first places which really embraced it. So
Burnley actually, as well.
Burnley, yeah, yeah,
When the Angels nightclub.
yeah, well, absolutely. I didn't know about the Angels nightclub was in Burnley, but yeah, you're right. But I think that's it's because it's about I just not that the thing is it's like so Underworld, right, would I would say is probably the most famous what I would consider techno uh yeah, like Underworld, for example, that what I would consider the most famous techno group probably in the world. um they started in Cardiff, and Ricky Smith's from Carmarthen, which is like West Wales. So it's just unfortunately Wales has never really had a scene for um particularly like Detroit based stuff. And so I think that there's certainly interest about it, but it's just making it more of a thing because I think, yeah, I think a lot of the time people think that techno is going to be something to be scared of. It's a bit like when people say metal. It's like a lot of people just go, "Oh, I don't like that." But if you like it, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think like I'll give you an example. I was stood there with Trafford at the
Mm.
by the Groove event. Big shout out to Traff. He's a regular on that Wheel Talk Laugh in
Yeah.
some very interesting environments that we find ourselves in. What do you call it? And he said this lad transitions really well, and that doesn't come without a knowledge of a deep knowledge of music and also performing slash producing, which you have. That was the next bit on the list I've got on my notes here. By the way, I think I've stopped laughing now and got the giggles because my cousin got the dog away. Honestly, that dog needs to stop doing what it's doing. Big shout out, Betty. But that doesn't come without a deep knowledge of producing and performing, mate. When did you first get behind the old turntables?
Well, the first ever time was probably when I was about 5 or 6 because I used to play like Cat Stevens and stuff on CDs for my like grandparents' anniversaries and stuff.
Love it.
But in terms of like really, I mean, and my dad used to like not in clubs or anything, but used to, like if they were having parties and stuff around their mate's house and stuff, he used to do a bit of DJing with his mate. But so I think like because music's always been something that I've been really interested in, when I was about 4 years old, I used to sing in this kind of like community uh band for kids who are disabled and like disadvantaged and stuff.
That's class.
So, I think from and then obviously my parents being into electronic music, my dad was like, why didn't you try this when I was a young kid? And then when I went through school, I went to a mainstream school, kind of didn't really focus on that for a while. And then later, lockdown came back around, and I thought, hey, actually, what do I want to do? And yeah, it was music. And like, because of my disability, I've never been able to, I love, I love I love things outside of electronic music. So I think if as well. So I think if I would have wanted if I could to have played an instrument and had a go at being in a band, and
Yeah.
so I find that thing quite attractive, to be honest. I mean, there's lots of things I think is benefit of being an electronic music producer, particularly in terms of if you mess up, it's all on you rather than if you've got four other people saying, oh, lots of different opinions, lots of ways to fall out kind of thing. You can only ever fall out with yourself really doing electronic music.
Yeah, you can't get your own ending, can you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, oh, of course you can be a duo and stuff, but even then it's only two as opposed to four or five. Um, So yeah, but so actually thinking about it, if I had the opportunity, I mean, like I would have loved to have like played I mean, some of my favorite house music is like kind of really sort of uh musical, like soulful house music and stuff with lots of instrumentation. If for example that there's a group called Blaze, who I think the most famous song was Most Precious Love, which is a big one.
um,
But their stuff is really musical, and like when I come to try making that, I'm like, this is impossible because I can barely use two hands to play the chords I need to. Do you know what I mean? So I think,
yeah,
but that's the amazing thing about electronic music is it gives people it's it's a lot it's a lot if you look at the history of electronic dance music, from Chicago, Detroit, London, in terms of like the jungle and stuff scene. Most of these people who created this stuff were, well, first of all, not exclusively, but mostly black people with not a lot of money, and they picked up what they can and what they could, and made the best out of what they could. And I think that's what I love that about the culture of electronic dance music. I think especially with social media, it's kind of gone away from that a little bit. And I think it's important that people remember what raving is for, what it's for, what the dance floor is for. It's about bringing people together and not dividing people.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, um, they often say culture comes from periods where you're trying to find something, find yourself, find the next step. Uh, Lots of things happen in working class towns and environments as like an act of defiance against something, or through shared or lived experiences, such as marginal um marginalization. I'm not saying this is the case for ourselves, but yeah, so I will say disabled people are sort of marginalized or
Absolutely. Yeah,
placed,
absolutely. And I
placed
think,
in a box.
and to be honest, Joe, sorry, I think that's a lot of the time that's what drives me on to keep doing it because it's a
Yes,
release for me. Music is a release for me. And there is part of me that's like, well, I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, thinking, oh, they've never even considered that like someone like myself or yourself could do this kind of stuff. So there is part of me that is like, yeah, let's let's not prove specific people wrong, but prove the stereotype wrong, right? So,
do you draw on your own personal experiences when producing records?
oh, absolutely, yeah, and like I was saying about the Detroit techno stuff, I mean, that music comes from sort of the post-industrialism in Detroit when the car factory.
Yeah,
It's like, like an industrial wasteland, and people were looking for something. So that's why you got that, but you've got like this kind of futuristic nature of it. Because I mean, well, techno is short for technology, so it was the idea of, the new technology in the 80s and kind of using that to build a story of the landscape, and so that's what really attracted me to it. And I think yeah, I think I do. I think like there's a lot. I like, I really like, I think I like the diversity of raving in terms of like I like having hands in the air at points, but I also like tunes where there's no expectation to have your hands in the air and you can put it in the air when you want, sort of thing.
you
So
can be immersed in the sound.
yeah, and just like I like just like losing myself in it. Like it's not even sometimes it's not even like I'm not even like don't get me wrong, if it's like a really groovy track, I don't know, if it's like George Morel, Let's Groove or whatever, right?
Banging it. I know it's for them, but just in
Yeah.
case.
But but that you can't, obviously with that kind of track, you're gonna dance to it. But like a lot of tracks, sometimes it's just like I'm just shaking my head. I'm sort of like, I'm taking in the sound. I'm not
I've
just
seen you do that at United by the Groove actually, and that's what I do. Like, just get lost in it, innit?
yeah, just forget about music has this amazing uh ability to just music we talked a lot about marginalization and discrimination. This is one of the things I really like about underground resistance is their kind of thing was to as the one of the founders of it, Mike Banks, came out of a session player for um Parliament Funkadelic in Motown, and they were bored of the image of particularly black people having to look perfect to be,
Yes,
emotional and have that kind of stereotypical thing. So the idea of it being faceless and actually the music being the most important thing. I think Frankie Knuckles once said, um, once you think
want to
you're
get
big,
it.
once you think you're bigger than the music, you're finished. So, it's all about the music. And so that's what I believe in. I think music in itself is indiscriminate, you know?
100%. And that's why it's really important, what you're doing with your producing and your work. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is experiences outside of your own musical producing realm, and sort of the challenges that you face, I face, Claire faces. Big shout out Claire, and all the disabled
Yeah.
people within this community.
Yeah.
and why it's important that, as a collective, we continue to do what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, um, I'm gonna I'm going to speak mostly about the perspective of a wheelchair user because that's the best way I can articulate.
Absolutely.
However, I think most disabled people, regardless, can um, tell you of if they go out to, they don't necessarily even have to go to raves, just music events in general, um, and the difficulties the that come with attending these events. Um, I think it's just my reason for doing it. I could go on forever about this, but I guess the reason like articulate it, I suppose. So basically, you know, we you have to do it, otherwise there won't be the opportunities to. It's not like we can just, you know, a lot of these events for people like us, they take weeks of planning. It's not like, I've just seen that I've just seen that and it's not, it's not to do with the fact, for example, that you're in the northwest and I'm in the southwest. It's got really nothing to do with location. I'm talking about the practicalities of attending the event.
Getting there.
Yeah, and and doing that and actually having a good time at those events. I've been to events before where I can barely get through the crowd, or I can barely, So it's going through those experiences to be able to learn which kind of events you want, and like, because my fa for example, like one of my favorite ever DJs is like Jeff Mills, right? Jeff Mills could be playing down. I mean, this is a bit exaggerated. Of course, if he was playing 5 minutes away from my house, I'd go and see it. But imagine this scenario where he's playing 5 minutes in
I
a
love this.
that I know is completely inaccessible. Like I'd even think twice that basically what I'm trying to say is like the more and more, and it's not even just going out to gigs, it's just going to the pub with my mates. Like the more and more inaccessible places I've been to, and the more and more I've done it, I've realized actually, again, you want to go, you want to go. The purpose of raving for me is to have a good time with people that you want to have a good time with, listening to the music you want to listen to, and you can't have a good time if you can't go to the toilet, you can't get around the venue, you can't, and it's speaking from an artist point of view, you can't perform because you can't perform in these spaces, so it limits your ability to receive income because you know unless you're in I feel like I'm speaking for I feel like I'm speaking for Jake here, so I'm sure like he could tell me. But basically, Jake is this um really talented DJ who um most of the time only plays at festivals. I mean, he's played at Creamfields, right? Multiple times.
Yeah, but there's probably a reason for that, as you say, because
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Because and somebody else who was not disabled in his position, has played multiple times, has played on stages with Camel Fat, has played on stages with Idris Elba. Like he would be getting club gigs everywhere.
Yes, that's a mint thing to say because, like you say, they probably it's same with like I know this is a bit weird, a bit of a weird comparison, but I often talk about the reason why myself in my situation hasn't got a girlfriend yet is because there are people out there that fancy people like ourselves. There are people out there that want to give Jake the platform to perform in these places,
Hmm.
but they're scared to actually.
Yeah, it's the practicalities of actually implementing it.
Yeah, like for example, this might sound weird, but it's actually when you're talking about 5 minutes down the road, it's actually harder and more of a bully to go out down Burnley to a smaller event such as I don't know,
Yeah,
a singer or whatever,
yeah.
or a local house music event that's 10 minutes away from my house, about 2.5 miles, because you think, oh, can I get in? Is there an accessible entrance? The other thing is taxi companies charge double for wheelchair users and only operate for certain times. So basically, I begrudge paying them prices at times because they don't even strap you
I
in.
tell you what, mate. Most of the time, even in Cardiff, most of the time, I have this one really, really, really good taxi driver who used to take me to and from uni on student finance, and he's really, really good. Most of the time, even in Cardiff, right? And it's not a massive place, but it's one of the UK's capital cities, right? You can't even get a taxi. You can't get an accessible taxi, and it's like even if it's even if it's on the day and you know you're going somewhere tonight, and it's like, can you do this? And they're like, oh, you're gonna have to ring us up like 30 minutes before. Like again, like people don't understand the prior planning that has to go into to these kinds of things
Yeah,
just by virtue of yourself being disabled. Like,
that's why it's actually easy to go further afield because you then become more adaptable, thinking, right, if six of us go to Manchester, we know that I can get someone to drive my van instead, and it's more justifiable for someone to drive our van uh, to Manchester to pick us up and pay them 70 quid
mm,
rather than paying someone 30, 40, 50 quid for
yeah.
something too much. Do you understand what I mean? And knowing you're going to get home safely. This is why more venues and places need to. We'll talk about it in a minute, but I know actually we'll talk about it now. It's actively consulting disabled music fans and performers and be involving them in these conversations and recognizing it's okay to get things wrong, but we're not this scary being that's gonna come after
Mm.
you. We actually just want to be treated equally. If you get things wrong, that's fine, but it's about
Getting things wrong, and
doing something about it where
doing
possible.
something about it is more worthwhile than thinking you got everything right.
Yeah, absolutely. You
But a
know,
lot of the time, it's like people are so scared of getting things wrong or going about it in the wrong way, or it's going to cost so much money. Like, don't get me wrong, not everything is practical. I get that.
absolutely.
We're in, the world in general is in hard financial times. Businesses are struggling. I'm 100% realistic about that, but I also think that a lot of the time, and again, like what I was talking about at the start about, um, you know, I increasingly thinking like, okay, I don't want, and I didn't want to be an activist. But if that's what you want to call me for, like, because we've got no other,
You are.
you got no other choice, like, to speak up about it. And you have to because ultimately, like a lot of the time, these people haven't thought about these things. So even if it's just planting a seed, it might not happen now, but even if it's just planting an idea or seed in somebody's head which they haven't thought about, um, and who's to know, what I'd be like if I wasn't a wheelchair user or what my mum and dad would think about would think
Disability.
about disability if I wasn't disabled, for example. However, I think that so what I'm trying to say when I say that is basically like you, I understand why people would be apprehensive about it, but that's more reason to get disabled people in the conversation, get them involved.
100% conversation is key to things happening. And you know what's really powerful, mate? Yeah. Like, even though myself and you have experiencing these things and experience to continue to experience these things, I feel like collectively, as a collective, continually, we'll always talk about this because it's something we all do together. People are finally sort of like, uh, listening up to these things now and sort of that's really powerful, and that brings me on to the next sort of bit about where we met United by the Groove and what your thoughts on what we did together, mate, in September the 20th. In September the 20th. On September the 20th. Sorry,
I,
lad.
I still, I can't believe I can't believe we're already nearly in January. It feels like we did that 2 weeks ago.
3 months ago now, yesterday.
Amazing, amazing, just an amazing, like, anyone listening to this podcast, anyone, I just recommend I'm sure that you've got plans in the new year to do things.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, 100%.
um, but anybody who gets an opportunity to do that, just it's the best. It's the it's the most welcoming and inclusive rave space I've ever been in. No, beyond that, actually, the DJ is really good. So the music is the most important part still. But like, but
Imagine if it crap.
yeah, yeah, I won't include myself in that, but everybody else was
Yeah, mate, you as well.
thank you, man. Yeah, I've said this continually to you off camera, but I've never, I've never seen as many wheelchair users and or disabled people in one space because people felt a lot. I'm not saying all of it, and I'm not saying, like you said, everyone makes mistakes and stuff, but I feel like that's because a lot of the questions that people like us usually have
No
about,
one's used to answering.
yeah, were answered before, so people felt like they could turn up. You could, if I I don't know, like people felt like they could turn up, and it was about community. It was about, forget about the accessibility. It just in general, I think the accessibility thing goes into the wider perspective, or just
The
understand
feeling.
the feeling, understanding community better, right? So, there was a real community feel there, like just people having a good time, and um and it was about it's about the music, the people, and the experience, and accessibility comes into that, and of course, that was what was we were trying to highlight, but actually what we were trying to do is put on a really flipping banging music event, and we did, or more specifically you did, but
No.
you know
Alone.
that's that's so I just, yeah, I'm kind of waffling on now, but yeah, it's a one of a kind experience I've had, but it shouldn't be, you know
I think
the fact it was a one of a kind experience is because it hasn't happened before. I haven't seen it happen before.
100%, and this is what we regularly talk about. It has to be a footprint and a blueprint for people with far greater resources than ourselves.
100%,
Take
yeah,
on board
because there's no excuse for example,
a massive nightclub.
a drum sheds or a warehouse project or whatever it might be, right? I'm not saying, disclaimer, I'm not saying that any of those places
Yeah,
are.
absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been to them, but I'm just trying to reel off on the top of my
Yeah,
head.
yeah, yeah.
No, they have so much more resources. I will give you. I won't say their name, but there's a particular place in Cardiff which um and I won't say what genre of music they do either because it will give it away. However, they have people. It's quite a small venue, and they have people in there every night. Now, a couple of weeks ago, no, even last week, no, Friday it was, even they put on. I said about the sort of lack of techno in Cardiff, um, and there was a techno event put on by somebody else, and yeah, it was done in a place which was completely inaccessible, and that's not down to the person because I've only recently connected with this person. I recently did a mix on their radio show, which was which was great. But my wider point being is like it doesn't matter if this techno event's going on here or this house music event's going on there. If I can't get to it, or if people like me can't get to it, doesn't matter how much is going on in your local area. It doesn't mean anything for your for well, in my opinion, it doesn't mean anything for the wider community because it's not, it's not just it's what about if you what about if you need hearing loops or you need
Yeah,
or any like it's not just specifically wheelchair users. I just think like given it's always had a real sort of conflict with I mean even going back to the 80s with house music and that being underground black gay scene in Chicago,
yeah.
there's still a lot of people that forget that,
The
that
original struggle.
yeah, our house music and techno and all of these genres have struggled for space um on a dance floor. So I think that in itself highlights more more the importance of trying to include as many people as possible.
That's why I never let it be understated, mate, how much of a mint job you're doing. And I'm not saying that because you're my mate. Honestly, like I said, like you said, sorry, um, you don't intend to be an activist, but just by you being yourself and putting yourself in these space, it's actually quite emotional, but
Yeah,
like positively emotional. Like thinking, yeah, man, this is what it's about because of your interaction on that radio station, or speaking, connecting with that particular person. Don't let it be understated that they will be thinking, "Crap, we need to do something about this." Because
yeah, yeah.
most people at their heart are good people and
Mm.
genuinely care. They've just never been presented with this problem, not problem, challenge before,
Yeah,
and just by your actions, you're providing those solutions. And it's absolutely mint to see you enjoying the fruits of your labour at the moment with some of the things you've been doing recently. Do you want to talk about some of the obviously radio stations and events you've been playing at after over the last few months?
yeah. So I originally come out of university and I'm trying to launch I guess my career in music and what and and the sound I want to try and do. And there is there's some really the thing is with Cardiff at the moment is there's a lot of really good people, and there's a lot of events that have been going on in Cardiff recently in terms of big stadium gigs and stuff. Unfortunately, that's driven money away from lots of independent venues. Um, so for example, in the summer you had Oasis, followed by a couple of weeks later you had Stevie Wonder.
Yeah,
And so everyone's putting money into the centre, and that's great for Cardiff as a city, but for the Welsh ecosystem and the independent venues, they're not getting as much as the share of the
yeah,
money. So I think like there's some really good people, and being able to tap into that recently as I can see a forecast, where there will be able to be a more diverse and inclusive music scene because for example one of the biggest club, and I will mention them because it's important, and I wrote about it in my university dissertation anyway. So
love it.
there's a club for 40 years. It's been open for 40 years in Cardiff called Club Eiffel Bar, also known as Welsh Club because it's got a Welsh name.
I
Um,
think I've heard of it.
so yeah, and it's a well-known thing, and it's been open for a long time. Now they have disabled facilities on the ground floor, and then they have free floors, and a lot, and it's really good. there is some electronic music, but it's just really, really good for bands and stuff, you know. So I like doing that stuff as well. And for example, you know, if basically if you're playing in there in Cardiff, you're doing well in your sort of local scene, right? And so there's three floors and only one of them is accessible. There's no lift.
Sorry to be that, mate.
So for me, that we were talking about big places with a lot of money. And I've heard rumors of, I mean, I'm continually hearing rumors of like, oh, we're going to make it more accessible, we're going to make it more accessible, we're going to make it more accessible. And it still doesn't.
Yeah,
And I'll get, I'll admit I'm paying into that as well because if there's a gig on the bottom floor that I can go and see because I want to go and see it,
you'll go
I'll
and do
go
it.
and see it. Or if my mates want to go out because it's a good night out, if my mates want to go out in that club and there's something on the bottom floor, I'll go in, I'll buy drinks in that venue.
Yeah,
But you know, it's I don't want to pun like it's, you know, I don't want to punish myself for themselves not being accessible. So. But I just think like in a situation like that, there is very little excuse. There is very little excuse because
there has to be some level of conversation and action rather than words, kind of thing.
my brother graduated from university about 4 years ago. And so if you say about 7 years ago he went to university in Cardiff. And when he was at university, he was telling me about how they're planning to make it more like planning to put a lift in and stuff.
Yeah,
But it hasn't materialized.
yeah,
And it's been open for 40 years and it hasn't materialized. I wouldn't expect it 30 or 20 years ago for it to materialize because it wasn't on people's minds. However, now we're in 2026, basically, you know? Like,
yeah, 100%. This is why the conversation and the work you're doing, mate, both in Cardiff and within your area is so brilliant, mate. Because I don't think I don't think unless, and this is the same for non-disabled people as well. Unless you're in a situation, you can never truly understand the process.
absolutely.
The
Yeah.
process, and like you are I really want to swear, but just in case I get in trouble, what do you call it? You are absolutely mint guy, and what you're doing is absolutely class, mate. You
And,
know,
and Joe, same to you, man. Like, I know you don't want to give yourself the credit, but seriously, man, like a lot of doors have been opened up by you guys, by well, not just you, by Lee and by Gabe and by Charlie. Like all of you do United by the Groove, you know. Definitely.
this is what it's about. You know, like uh, it's buzzing to see that you've done your own event in Cardiff and etc. We all learn from each other's processes, don't we? And
Yeah.
this is how we share things through actively going out and doing them. I'm rambling. I don't even know what I'm saying. I lost my train of thought. But basically,
I
I'll
do that
just
all the time, mate. I think it must be a cerebral palsy thing to do.
yeah, I'll cut the rambling out, mate. Do you want to talk a bit about your event that you ran in Cardiff, and then after that we'll do some other sign off questions.
Yeah, so this was April this year, and I put it on in this really good independent venue called the Canopy in Cardiff. Amazing people. If you're listening to this and you want to like look it up, they put on lots of different music events. Very uh inclusive and open-minded venue, community grassroots venue. I put on my own event as part of my university dissertation in which
Brilliant.
I tried to make it as accessible as possible. And I did it from the perspective of myself as a wheelchair user. However, um, you know, especially like in 2026, I'm hoping to live in Cardiff full time. And I really want to try and get some stuff off the ground because like there are other. I might give a shout out to other people in the area doing some great stuff in Manchester as well. Um, particularly under one roof raves.
Oh yeah, mate. We've had some correspondence with them, haven't we? You know,
Yeah,
mint people.
there and also a night that I've um become aware of recently called Lucid Juice,
That's
um
class.
who is run by a woman called Gina, who I've recently connected with on social media, and yeah, she's a very just a class person, and also is very passionate about um access for disabled people. So yeah, I think like there are a few things going on in places, but it's what I would like to see is it become more of a standard nationwide, you know, meaning not just England, Wales, but also Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. UK wide, that would be amazing. I mean, that's a long-term thing, but that would be like to implement it so that, because clubs open now, and they're still not accessible. So it's not a case of, well, the building's been open for 40 years and they're gonna have to reconstruct parts of it. Like, it just hasn't been thought about.
Yeah, and this is why, like, you know, people need to involve people in decision making processes that directly affect them.
It should be on a long list of priorities that they've got. Like, I'm not saying it should be the first or it should be the second, but it should
Just
be on the
stop.
it should be
Yeah.
on the list of the priorities. Like, and it's just not often enough anyway at the minute. It's just not. So
Do you know what, mate? I'm absolutely so glad to have met you, pal. Over the last 3 or 4 months, myself, you, and Claire become great friends, and the community we're building is absolutely brilliant, mate. And I guess this is a message for the podcast. We've rambled a bit. I've tried my best not to swear. I
yeah.
probably won't even get in trouble.
Wait, honestly, if you want someone not to swear, I'm not the best person to get on your podcast.
But hopefully, through our work, we're showing it's okay to be vulnerable, okay to be real, okay to be authentic. And the best thing, before I ask the last question, the best thing what I thought about United by the Groove in terms of our particular dynamic wasn't even the United by the Groove night. The fact that we all went to Amber's afterwards is like,
Oh,
so
by the way, what a mint club that is such a great club.
yeah, we're brilliant, mate. We were particularly disappointed on that night previously in terms of myself and Trafford and his partner because we've been before and we were waiting, but we were waiting for not under, but 8 or 8 states to come on. We didn't quite have the stamina and patience of you guys and your mum and dad absolutely having it right off to stay there.
I think my mum and dad any excuse for him to have it off. Yeah, yeah,
That's really powerful, though, isn't it, mate? That from that friendships can be built communities and
absolutely.
network.
And once again, it shows the power of music to be able
Yeah,
to do that and bring people together.
100%. And I guess the final sign-off question, because my shoes just fell off and loads of things have gone wrong, including the dog scratching at the door. I'm just gonna get told when I get out of this room. Thankfully, no nervous laughter has occurred from myself. If you could have one track, yeah, that's summed up your musical journey, what would it be and why?
There's so many, but I'd have to go Underground Resistance, Final Frontier.
Love it, mate. And why do you reckon that is?
Um, because it encapsulates. There's something about the sort of relentless acid line and melancholic strings, which kind of sum up. Um, I think what I seek in dance music, which is somewhere between um, ecstasy and agony, um, and and also just because it's such a It's a timeless track made in 1992, and it could have been made today.
Check
But if I had to go specifically house music, Joe Smooth, Promised Land. Uh,
Oh, mate.
yeah,
Brothers, sisters, one day we will be free from something what violence, and then people
fighting
die,
and violence. Yeah.
fighting and violence, and people dying in the street. But hopefully, there's nobody dying in the street in Panama over this Christmas period. Finally, even though I said it was last question, before I press the recording and swear lots and lots and lots and lots, where can people find you and your mint work, mate? On Instagram
Um,
and all sorts. Where?
so Instagram, uh, uh, I think I don't even know my own Instagram handle. That's how useless I am. I think Finley underscore Allen one, and also yeah, Finley Allen FinleyAllen on Spotify. I've got some music coming out hopefully in 2026. So will be my most up to date work and the work I'm most proud of. Uh, as we speak currently. So yeah, look out for that. And yeah, if you wanna hear some weird sounds and stuff, then might be right up your street.
Love it, mate. You should be proud of everything that you do. I'm proud to call you my friend. Uh,
Absolutely. Same here, man. And thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, man.
yeah, and sorry to thank you for allowing me to re-record this because I literally overthink every sound, every touch, every smell, every word. So hopefully I won't get sacked because I haven't swore in this podcast. So yeah,
I'm sure you
we'll
won't.
for you next week or whatever.
Um unless you want to work for Club Alpha back anytime soon, then in which case you might have a problem. But
Nice one, mate. I'll end the recording. Cheers, pal.
cheers.